Please listen carefully.
Hello, universe, and welcome to the Optimist Daily Update. I'm Amelia Buckley.
And I'm Summers McKay.
And we're part of the team behind the Optimist Daily, making solutions the news. We bring you reader-funded solutions news every day in order to change the tenor of news media, social media, and the direction of your day to get us all focused on solutions.
7 days a week, we publish positive news stories written by award-winning journalists and delivered online to your inbox and through our social channels. And also, we are sharing the solutions in a commute-worthy, walk-worthy, home office-worthy. Listen to us in Latvia or be one of the thousands of people who've already listened to us this month worthy podcast. Today is Monday, the 8th of November, 2021. Okay, Amelia, I feel like I might be drinking my own Kool-Aid on this one, but last night, in the middle of the night, I was looking at like our stats and I got kind of emotional.
I don't want to say I'm shocked because I know we're awesome, but it is very optimistic. It's an optimistic outlook on our future here with our podcast.
Exactly.
People like listening to us. It's kind of like we kind of started this, not really knowing what would happen, kind of haphazardly threw it together. And I was like, okay, I can learn how to edit a podcast. And now we have like thousands of people listening to us each month.
It's pretty cool. You should be very, very proud of yourself. And, Kristy and I are only as lucky as we are to have the team behind us to help us create these amazing stories and to tell them effectively. And Amelia keeps us on the rails. And I'm so excited that, Amelia and Ariel are joining in with their voices. It's just this whole collaborative vibe. I love it. It feels good. But before we get into the stories today, which actually we have a collaborative feel-good vibe story.
We do.
I want to touch on something that we were talking about on Friday with Kristy. Remember, she was saying that I have super jumped into the soccer mom, the swim team mom, the whole thing. Well,
have you bought a Volvo yet?
No, I have not bought a Volvo yet. But there is possibly a slightly sturdier SUV in my future. I'm not 100% sure. Gas efficient nonetheless, but there is, however, ballet lessons in my future.
Oh my gosh.
I'm on Instagram, right? After I had just posted my amazement at our doubling each month listenership. And what is served to me but an ad called Tutu Toddler. And it's so cute, right? So it's called, Tutu Toddler Class. Brennan is waitlisted because apparently, and it is actually really hard to find a dance class for somebody under 3 because let's be honest, what are they going to do? They're going to run around. Yeah. But I am so delighted. We are waitlisted for Tutu Toddler here in Austin. It's a Saturday morning class. It's going to be a little tight because we're going to go from soccer to Tutu Toddler. I don't know how it's going to all work, but soccer season's going to end soon. Anyway, so fingers crossed, we're going to have soccer cleats and tutus, and I am pretty excited.
That's great. So, and I think that we have a story actually coming out about the benefits of singing and dancing. And I think that especially for young kids who can't necessarily participate in coordinated sports, or they can, but they're not really playing soccer as you explained to us.
Right.
I think dance classes, though, they can totally get into it because even young babies know how to dance, right? They hear the music and they get going. And who cares if they're all in sync or not? They're out there in tutus doing their thing.
Exactly. I picked Brennan up from school the other day and they were having a dance party because it was an inside day because of a rain day. And the teachers were laughing because they were like, do you know that she twerks?
Oh my gosh.
When she was super tiny, and I think I've talked about this before. I read this thing that you're supposed to talk, read, sing to your kids. So I just was constantly singing and dancing at her. And I think I may have taught her sort of inappropriate dancing. So anyways, time for some formal ballet training. We're going to get the rigor on. Yes. And I think today's kind of a girl day here at the Optimist Daily, isn't it?
It is kind of a girl day at the Optimist Daily. I woke up with a girl power feeling about me. So I decided to pick a story that's kind of about girl power. Not necessarily all about girl power because it has implications for men too. But the headline reads, collaborative rewards make women more competitive at work. And so I thought this was really interesting because it relates to the pay gap between men and women in the workplace, but kind of takes a new twist on it. So this is about a study from the University of Arizona. And they were looking at how different factors at work affect the competitiveness of women and men. And generally, studies have found that women are less competitive in the workplace than men. And that's because of a lot of factors. Essentially, it's partially due to societal expectations that women will be less competitive. It's also because women generally have more caretaking responsibilities and less time to devote to competitiveness at work. There's a lot of factors around it. But this study found that women become more competitive when they are offered the chance to share their winnings. So this study is a 3-part study. And in the first round, they had men and women. They were offered $2 for every problem they solved. And then in the second round, they were offered $4, but only to the first 2 people to complete the problem. So there's like a time and competitive aspect added to it. Mm-hmm. And then in the final round, they could choose if they wanted to take a low risk option and get $2 for every problem, or if they wanted to engage in the higher risk $4 option. And the initial results showed that 52% of men chose the higher risk option compared to 34% of women.
Okay.
But then the researchers introduced a twist, and they said that if you choose the higher risk option, you can share the winnings with your teammates. And this twist upped the amount of women that participated in the higher risk option to 60%. So essentially, when women are given the opportunity to share their winnings with their coworkers and their teammates, they are more likely to engage in competitive risk taking at work. And the implications for this is that if we change the way that we structure higher positions at work and we change the reward structure of higher positions at work, you're going to get more women who are more likely to apply and compete for these positions. So essentially, instead of just offering big paychecks to top level executives, if you offer more of a collaborative pay structure for success at work, you're going to get a lot more women in these positions. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really well summarized by the co-author, Mary Rigdon, who says, it's not that women don't like competition, but they are sensitive to social aspects of it that men aren't. When incentives reflect those social aspects, women are just as competitive as men. And I was really drawn to this story because I have found this in my own life. I've found, some of these trends happening around me. And I've noticed it in working with men and women, that men have generally, not to generalize, I'm sure there are many men that like the collaborative aspects of winning just as much as women. But I found that in general, women are more sensitive to the experience of those around them as well as their own.
I love this story. And I love this story because it is how Kristy and I have committed to leading the Optimist Daily without even meaning to, right? We just said what feels good to us as leaders and what makes people feel good in our team. And I think there is just this paradigm shift that we're seeing in certainly, the Great Resignation. So many people are leaving work and leaving the environments that they were in because they're not getting the sense of community, success, opportunity, abundance that they want. And I recently wrote a piece about the 3 reasons we commit to any company or position for a long period of time. There's intrinsic, which is how it makes you feel. There's extrinsic, which is what are the financial benefits, healthcare benefits, et cetera. And then the third one that isn't often talked about that is just beginning to be codified is structural. So if a structure of an environment, of a workplace, is something that allows mentorship, relationships, and clear voice, so people in the company are given the space and place to express their voice, opinions, then you have a more loyal and more expansive work team. So I love this. I love that the world of work is changing. I love that women at work are being embraced as leaders. And obviously, as a female leader at work, I am delighted to be part of this conversation. I'm thrilled, Amelia, that you found this article. And, just definitely check my stuff. If you ever see me not being collaborative as the, jefe on this thing, you tell me, okay? Because that upward communication, I think, is also really critical too, right? It's imperative that leaders are open to not, I wouldn't even say criticism, open to collaborative advice. Yeah. So now,
definitely.
Speaking of collaborative advice.
Not your best transition, but
no,
I'll take it.
It is actually. You're going to be shocked by this transition because I'm going to pull back the veil a little bit on the Optimist Daily here. We recognize that the conversation about the COVID vaccine is a really heightened and dangerous one. And we at the Optimist Daily all believe in vaccinations. We encourage COVID vaccinations. We want people to get their vaccinations and their boosters. But we also recognize that that's not why people come to the Optimist Daily to read stories, right? They don't come to see the same news that they're seeing everywhere else. Now on the podcast, you guys let us be a little more freewheeling here. So we're open to talking more about stuff that like we really feel inside. But we do have kind of a third rail when it comes to stories about the COVID vaccine. Amelia wrote to me, I don't know, a few days ago and said, what do we want to do? Do we want to talk about vaccinations for children? And we all agreed that as much as we like that this is happening and the expansive opportunity for herd immunity is coming and children can be vaccinated is good news, it's not the news we share on Optimist Daily. But instead, we can share other stories about the health, safety, and efficacy of vaccines as they have changed the world for good. And so that's why this headline I'm taking on due to some collaborative advice, conversation, and decision-making from our team. See? Do you like my transition now?
I like it now.
Okay, cool. All right. So my headline reads, New UK study confirms success of HPV immunization program. Now, HPV, for those who don't know, is the human papillomavirus. It is the virus that causes cervical cancer. 13 years ago, the NHS in England, the National Health System in England, launched an HPV program. And thanks to a study funded by the Cancer Research UK, they have shown with solid proof this vaccination program has stopped thousands of women from experiencing precancerous changes to cells and from developing the disease. Now, the study, which looks at data from HPV immunization program using the Cervix vaccine, shows that cervical cancer rates in women who were administered the vaccine between ages 12 and 13 were 87% lower than in an unvaccinated population. The cancer cases in this age group dropped from 50 per year to only 5. Now, later vaccination offerings, right, between 14 and 16 also had an incredibly high rate of reduced cervical cancer occurrence at 62%. And then at 16 and 18, it was dropped by 34%. So we learned from this that getting it early makes a big difference. Also, there's another vaccine called Gardasil. That is the vaccine that I had. Now, here's an interesting thing talking about vaccines. I actually had cervical cancer. At 21, 22 years old, I was diagnosed with cervical cancer. It was very early. It had not progressed. I went through a procedure called the LEAP procedure, which they had to do several times, which basically is a aggressive scraping of the cervix using chemicals. And I now, 10 years later, or 10, like I'm 32.
At age 31.
Exactly. 20 years later, I am cancer-free. I've only had one occurrence of an abnormal pap. Again, that was right around pregnancy time when my whole body was, doing the pregnant thing. But I did, in fact, even though I had cervical cancer, I did get the vaccine because there are multiple strains of the virus that cause this cellular change that results in cancer. So, long story short, it is a great study. You can read more about the results. It's just incredible to see the impact of HPV vaccination. The study's lead author, Professor Peter Cicini, is quoted as, "We've known for many years that the HPV vaccination is very effective in preventing particular strains of the virus, but to see the real impact of the vaccine, the real life impact of the vaccine has been truly rewarding." So I love this story. I love that people are healthier and that women are not undergoing the incredibly aggressive and relatively brutal procedures that we used to have to undergo when we were diagnosed with cervical cancer. And additionally, we know that boys taking the vaccine also reduces, this is a herd immunity thing here, guys, reduces the spread. Now, while most boys do not end up with cancer, but largely the way the HPV virus is introduced into females is through penises. So they're not happening at 15, 16 years old. They're getting introduced when women become sexually active later in their lives or earlier, depending on, but that's where HPV comes from. So vaccinating both boys and girls actually reduces the occurrence of cervical cancer. Boom.
I love this one
because that's all I got.
This is a great example. People always talk about vaccines and they talk about how our modern society doesn't even remember how brutal smallpox was because everyone is vaccinated against it now. And this is an interesting one for me because I didn't even realize that the HPV vaccine was so new because it came out probably, I mean, I'm 23 now, so it came out around the time that I was eligible to get it, and I got it at age 13. Yeah. And I didn't even realize at the time that it was like a novel, groundbreaking thing. And now that I'm reading the study, I'm like, oh my gosh, my entire generation is going to see far lower rates of cervical cancer because of this really revolutionary vaccine that came about, luckily, when I was in my early teens.
Yeah, and with any luck, this will also reduce infertility rates that are caused by cervical cancer, or at least infertility doctors who can tell you you're infertile because of cervical cancer, which was my case. And, there's so many downstream positive effects. And I right here, you're absolutely right. We have a generational experience where I, born 20 years earlier, needed a vaccine that wasn't available and ended up with a life-threatening disease because of it. And you and your generation will not. So bravo. Let's wrap up because we've been chatting for a long time because I'm so excited to have Amelia's voice today. What else do we have on the stories today?
We've got why the lost art of daydreaming is good for your mental health. COP26 announces $1.7 billion in funding for Indigenous forest protection. So we're going to continue to offer you guys updates from Glasgow on the climate conference there. 8 tips for making Thanksgiving more sustainable this year if you're looking towards our next holiday. And scientists discover new natural antibiotics already inside the human body, relating back to that story we were talking about on Friday. What else do we have?
We've got a new study that helps rocket us toward inclusive space travel. Expert-approved ways to combat seasonal depression. Actually, that's really important, right? We're falling backward where we fell backward last night. Ugh. Study. Traditional Samoan plant could help treat obesity and diabetes. U.S. to begin regulating methane emissions from oil and gas wells. Although Kristy was saying methane on Friday, so I'm not sure.
That's the British pronunciation. I'm going to continue with methane because I live in America.
Yeah. All right. So fortunately, the U.S. is regulating methane emissions from oil and gas wells. And last but not least, Venus flytraps generate magnetic fields when it's time to eat. Nom, 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 nom. Okay. That's all, everybody. Thank you for listening to today's Optimist Daily Update. We promise to continue to share solution-based stories with ideas on how you can participate in this changing world and ensure it is changed for the good. Become an emissary on theoptimistdaily.com. $5 a month. Support reader-funded independent journalism. Hey, Amelia, thanks for being here today. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks for having me. Bye. We'll be back tomorrow with more solutions.
Bye.